But extreme cases, you know, there's a domestic violence call or something, and police officers come in, and the husband and wife are fighting. There's an autistic child involved, and the child's freaking out. You know, the parents aren't going to be thinking, "Oh, we need to tell the officer to use kids' gloves and be careful with it." I mean,
well, you know, let's back up here, Eric.
I don't
You're describing a domestic violence situation where mom and dad are fighting. I would have to ask, who called 911, mom or dad? Why did they call 911? What were their expectations for the police to, what were they asking the police to come out and do? Stop a fight or interact with a person with autism? Now, if that becomes a side issue and these feuding mom and dad were already proactive and they have had their house flagged, where they, first responders, before they arrive, know that there's somebody with autism there, then the quality of that contact may be better. If mom or dad have done nothing along these lines, you can't expect them to break up a feuding couple and then say, and then listen to them while they're saying, "Oh, you need to know about autism right here and right now." You know, let's be realistic. It might be a little late, and the credibility of mom and dad are going to be down the tubes during that phone call anyway. So a good first responder who may have to arrest mom, dad, or both of them may be very unlikely to want to take advice from them at that time.
Or a situation like we heard out east where an adult autistic ended up fatally injuring his mother.
Right.
How is that approached?
Well, it then becomes, that situation becomes a criminal justice situation. We can't make judgments necessarily that every person with autism is incapable of forming criminal intent. We can't make the opposite assumption that every person with autism is a high-risk person that you wouldn't want to live next door to either.
No.
Neither one of those would be accurate. So each criminal justice situation carries with it its own facts, its own circumstances, and so each one will be judged on the merits of that case. So we can't make an assumption until the criminal justice process goes through whether or not somebody could be guilty, whether or not they could assist their defense attorney in their own defense, whether they have the ability to form a criminal intent. That will be dealt with. In that particular case, I am well aware that law enforcement had to take that person into custody. And I would ask anybody, in spite of the fact that my belief is that this young man couldn't form the intent, he still committed the crime. He's not going to probably be held liable for it. But ask yourself, would you want to live next door to him right now? Would you want your wife and children living next door to this fellow right now?
I don't know.
I know. I wouldn't. I'll guarantee you I wouldn't. I have no assurance that he wouldn't come and try and hurt my wife, my child, or myself. So there has to be a safe place, not only for this person, but for the other people that he might affect. If law enforcement were to let him go and he went out and offended or hurt or killed somebody else, we wouldn't think that would be a very valid call. We would be howling, saying, "Why did you do that?" In that case, my understanding, and all the facts aren't in, is that the law enforcement agencies made terrific accommodations. They reached out to the autism community. They made sure that the persons working in the jail or secured facility knew about the autism. They brought in favorite foods and favorite items to accommodate this person's needs. They kept an eye on him to make sure that he couldn't hurt himself. I think they did a terrific job, and that would be exactly what I would recommend that law enforcement does. It's short-term care. Long-term care, or how that outcome is going to be, if he's not capable of helping in his own criminal defense, then we have to make sure that society's protected against people who may be harmful to others or themselves. I mean, that's fair and reasonable, whether you have autism or not. If you're a threat to me or yourself, we need to make sure that we give you the security that you need, and make sure that society is protected from that too.
Do you also train security professionals that work in large shopping centers?
I have trained people who work in private security, private investigators, the hospital security professional, people who secure our events, our buildings, our borders, our schools, people who work in the hospitality industry, transportation industries, non-teaching school staff. There are many people that need to know about autism now. I would argue that everybody needs to know a little bit about autism. But here in mid-2009, the good news is a lot of people do know about autism. I take it back 22, 23 years ago when we first learned, nobody knew about autism.
Rain Man.
Yeah, Rain Man, or was, stereotypes, and there was nothing to base it upon. Yeah, this is even before Rain Man. So
They would just be called retarded or something.
well, whatever the terminology was, people did not know what it was. Your neighbors, you had to explain to your immediate family, to your friends, to your colleagues. Now, when I bring up autism in the first decade of the 21st century, laid into it, people have a sense and a knowledge of what you're talking about. It becomes easier to advocate for people with autism now than it was 20 years ago.
Does the type of training vary greatly, whether you're dealing with firefighter, police, security professionals, hospital professionals?
There will be some nuances or certain dilemmas that may be posed depending on your profession. But basically, the response is going to be the same. It doesn't matter what uniform or what profession you're in. So making adjustments for the sensory environment, being aware of the effect of what you say, and it may be repeated by someone who's verbal, that your body language may be repeated, that person may have a confusion with the nuance of verbal communications, jokes, innuendos, figures of speech, colloquialisms, anything beyond the first meaning of a word. If they're nonverbal, they may be confused by your body language. They may send back to you body language that will confuse you. Knowing these things, knowing then when people make the disclosure, they call 911, they say it's about a person with autism, they see the autism bumper sticker or puzzle piece magnet on your car. You've filled out a form which you can get at autismriskmanagement.com, an autism emergency contact form. They discover it. They've had a little training. Here's where accommodations can be made. So it's really a two-way street. When the autism community meets halfway with the first responders, we can then start problem solving. Yeah, sure. What a fire rescue professional may need would be a little different when we get into the nuance of it. For example, the techniques of interrogation and interview of the suspect or offender or victim witness with autism is probably not something a hospital emergency room nurse or a 911 telecommunicator or an emergency medical responder would need to know. So that would be something that would probably be limited to police training. How to make adjustments in the hospital emergency room and the use of certain techniques and medical care may not be something that you need to get into high detail with, for example, with the police.